So Todd Duncan.
Yeah. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, Vicky.
You've been a photographer for how long?
I've been shooting. I've had a camera in my hand for about 15 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's been a while, and I'm always sort of scared to admit that my what do you, if you call it, tenure in the industry, or the age. Because there's so many new photographers that are out now, and a lot of kids that are sort of half my age in a sense. So it's sort of like I don't want to consider myself a dinosaur and not be hip anymore. But yeah, it's been about 15 years. Yeah.
Cool. And what got you started in photography?
I did the auspicious beginnings. Actually, where I actually graduated from journalism. I took I have a degree in journalism, broadcast journalism at Carleton University in Ottawa.
Okay.
Carleton. Going back many years ago, and I have a degree in it, but I was sort of deemed to be not very succinct as a writer. I used to interview people, and I would be, I wouldn't be able to actually create an actual cohesive, story.
Yeah.
So I was too fragmented. So my professor pretty much threw a camera in my lap and said, "Why don't you try photo journalism and take a picture worth 1,000 words instead of writing it?"
Yeah.
So that was my beginning. So actually, I did about 5 or 6 years in the press industry, shooting as a press photographer. So my background is really is people. I mean, I'm a people photographer.
So after you did your photojournalism degree, did you automatically go straight into photography, or?
Yeah, I mean, after it was a journalism degree that I actually acquired in the 90s, and then I shot for the press for about 5 years. I did some work with some of the papers, and then realized that it wasn't as lucrative as I wanted it to be, as opposed to owning your own, hopefully your own photography business and shooting more commercial and more, having your own studio. So I sort of evolved from press photography, and over the last 10 years, I've gotten more into. Then I started shooting a lot of weddings. I built up my equipment and my credibility, in terms of the equipment I purchased through weddings for about 5 years, and then after weddings it was portraits and fashion, and now it's sort of commercial, and I mean, ideally I'd love to be shooting more sort of celebrity portrait / artist promo. Any self-employed person, you can get up anytime you want.
I hear
you can be literally, you can be on your phone in your boxer briefs answering phone calls if you want to be at your studio. So that's obviously, the freedom and the flexibility of your hours is great. The downside is that, of course, if you don't discipline yourself and you don't have a business plan, which is more and more important now with young photographers that are starting out, if you don't have a plan to be disciplined, then you can fall flat on your face as well. So
that would kind of be some advice to people starting out, is if you don't have a direct plan, then you should probably make a plan.
Back in the day, back in the 90s, there was maybe a tenth of us in terms of professional photographers in the industry. So you have to have a sort of a focus and a business plan in a sense, but now it's so much more important now, because you're competing against people who have degrees in business and marketing, and they've picked up a camera because it's quite accessible now in the digital age. So you really have to have a real focused business plan now, more than anything, for sure.
Is there any other advice you would give to people wanting to start out in photography?
Well, I guess with digital, it makes it very accessible to experiment a lot, and that's created a lot more good work out there. But there's also a lot of bad work out there too. It's really watered down the market, because there's just so many images that are filtered through online and on the web. So my advice really is, and it's advice that we've always been saying as an artist for years, but really find a niche and really find a real certain style, and try to, obviously you have to balance yourself between paying the bills, but you've also got to have some time to actually, follow your niche and try to shoot your own style and develop that book. Generally speaking, I love photographing people. So I've done everything from weddings, like I said, to press photography, to portraits, to you know, advertising involving people now with musicians and fashion now, but you know, but in terms of actually creating a real succinct style and a real focused niche, it's always evolving. You know, it's sort of hard just to have a goal and set it, and then when you finally achieve that sort of the light that you like and that sort of style, you're finished. No, it's always going to be evolving. So I guess that's the nature of an artist. And
you did mention something about cameras being more attainable. As I sit here with my
with
Canon T2i
competition there, that's right. Yeah,
you know, it's a lot more accessible to high definition equipment that does produce a really good product for a decent price. Now that's something that's obviously changed in the industry, that's made it more difficult. Not necessarily difficult for you, but there's a lot more competition out there. Like you had said, there's a lot more, it's watered down as well. Is there anything else in the industry that you've noticed that's changed and shifted through the years that you've been doing this that have either made it more difficult or more simple, or anything that's just adjusted the way that you've worked?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the cameras are one thing. The actual hardware is one that's made it a lot more accessible. I think also just sort of maybe just the post-production. I think the biggest thing photographers have to realize now is that they're not only the photographer now, they're also the lab. You know, so they're doing all the post-production involved now in Photoshop, and that, you know, back in the 90s, we just take our film, take it to the lab, and dump it there, and all the work was done at the lab. So a lot of times I wake up going, you know, I go, wow, I realize that I'm actually doing two, or then if I add on the marketing aspect of it, and, you know, actually being the business person behind it and selling your work, that's like 3 jobs in one. Whereas back in the 90s, I must admit, it was, I mean, you still have to have the business concept of marketing your work, but especially the work that the labs used to do, you're doing all that now.
Musicians on Tour, it is mostly based on based on musicians.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you some of your favorites.
I better get out my Shazam here on my iPhone. I mean, I had a feeling you're going to ask me that question. I'm, being that I'm kind of old school, you know, I still follow, like, you know, Smashing Pumpkins and you know, I'm the Killers and the Trues and, you know, guys like that. I'm a bit of a hard rock kind of guy, so but, you know, in terms of the local acts in the city, I probably want to touch up on in terms of my inspirations, I guess, or, you know, people that I'm following.
Have you ever worked with musicians before?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I've worked with local artists in the city. I just shot jazz singer Amanda Wood last month for her CD promo.
Very cool.
And great, amazing singer. She's really doing well in Los Angeles now as well. But I work with a lot of sort of independent artists that need images that are, you know, created from I guess from an artist perspective. So.
And last but not least, what would your advice as a photographer be for musicians? Like, what are some of the things they need to pay attention to when it comes to their image using photography?
Well, again, going back to the fact that you know, cameras are so readily available. I mean, I get a lot of actors and a lot of artists and musicians that call me and say, you know, we have our own photos taken already, you know. But the problem is that they're getting their photos taken, but they're not putting a lot of thought into the image and the concept and the mood. And I think it's just because it's so readily available that everyone can take it. Yes, you can roll the dice and you can get lucky and you can maybe get a couple of images out of a photo shoot. But I think that the biggest key when trying to let's face it, your cover, your image is everything, and I think this is important that a lot of musicians forget, is to look at something that really inspires you online, and it doesn't even have to be online, but just an image that really inspires you, and I guess what sort of represents your music. But it's important to hire. It's really important to hire an artist, especially when it comes to music promo, because, you know, creating mood through lighting is vital, and that's where you have to know. You know, have to hire someone who knows how to light, and that's creating the mood, whether it's a heavy metal mood or feel, or whether it's like shooting Amanda Wood, for example, more of a jazzy sort of, just more of a sexy jazz kind of mood, and it all comes down from with your lighting. So what pleases me when a client sees the image straight out of a camera and they go, hey man, like, we've got the shot, that's it right there. I'm a real staunch traditionalist. Obviously, I will Photoshop when required, but I really take pride in creating mood from the shoot, right out of the camera, and that for me is my biggest, I guess, gratification is when someone sees the image right out of the camera and go, we've got it. That's sort of the true testimony of photography. Am I looking in the camera, or should we?
Oh, you can look wherever you want.